I'm here. Don't worry. I made it back. Hello there. Welcome. Glad to have you on this Monday. Hopefully your Thanksgiving holiday was tremendous. And now we're back at it before the next big holiday. Appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening in that app, which is free to download and free to use, is sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. And as always, I'd love to get your thoughts. 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show. Corey Roldan from KKTV will be my guest in the next segment. And then the rest of the time, you can be my guest at that number. Crazy game last night. Got a little nutty there, but ultimately the algorithm worked. And the Denver Broncos won again and now sit atop of the entire American Football Conference. But that's what this is, and it's really tested my ability to create metaphors when it comes to this Broncos team because they are so predictable. And I don't mean that in a bad way because they haven't lost a game in 2 months. But I'm just saying every game for the Denver Broncos seems like it's the same thing, has the same key elements that get the Broncos a win. So my latest metaphor here is your algorithm on social media, especially if you're on Instagram. What's your algorithm? It finds out what you like, and it keeps serving it up to you over and over and over again. It keeps sending you the same quotes from Peaky Blinders and clips from I Think You Should Leave. And it just keeps doing it over and over and over again. And there's a time where you go, you know what? I'd like to see something else, algorithm. Like maybe I would like to get, poetry from Franz Kafka. Or maybe I would like to see clips from Bridgerton. I've heard great things about Bridgerton. Let me see clips of Bridgerton to see if I like it. And the algorithm mostly is like, no, this is what you like. You like the clip of the guy that has too much stuff on him in the mall and that doesn't want to be here anymore. You laugh hysterically every time you see it. And every quote you see from Thomas Shelby, played by Cillian Murphy, motivates you, gets you in your right mindset. There's no rest for me in this world, no rest for me in this life, maybe in the next one. You could tell my algorithm doesn't serve me up a lot of Peaky Blinders, does serve me up a lot of I Think You Should Leave clips. I wanted to be more mass appeal, than just saying what my algorithm serves me. But that's Sean Payton. That's the Denver Broncos. You may think you want to see something different, but ultimately, what do you want? You want the Broncos to win a game, right? So this is what you keep getting. And there was a great example of this last night in that game. After Bo Nix hit that, dare I say, Mahomesian throw at the end of the half, it was like Sean Payton said, you know what? You made a play like that. Let's let the slack on the leash go a little bit more in that third quarter. It's okay, Bo. You can use your legs a little bit more. You can do some of that kind of stuff in the third quarter. Once in a while, your algorithm will crack, and you'll get a little taste of something else. But ultimately, the algorithm is scientific. The algorithm knows all. They know that even if they serve you up a little bit of something else, if they keep doing it, you're not going to like it, and you're going to want to go back to the clips from I Think You Should Leave and the quotes from Peaky Blinders. It's the same thing with that football game last night. Sean Payton's like, all right, you know what? He made a great play at the end of the half. Let's see what he can do. And Bo Nix was cooking in that third quarter. Looked great, right? And then what happened? What happens to Bo Nix a lot when he starts cooking? Right? He stared down a receiver and makes an unconscionable decision that ends up being a pick. I mean, that was as bad of an interception as Bo Nix has thrown the entire time he's been with the Denver Broncos. It was horrible. And what did Sean Payton do? All right, shut it down. We're back to our normally scheduled programming the rest of the way. Run the ball, short passes, rely on the defense. That was fun and all. You got a little taste of it. But we're here to win football games. We're not here for Bo Nix to make the SportsCenter's top 10. Same with your social media algorithm. They may show you something different. But you get too many clips into Bridgerton, you're like, I actually I don't like Bridgerton. Take me back to I Think You Should Leave. That's what Sean Payton decided to do. All right, now it's time for the Broncos to win a football game. Now it's time to give the people what they really ultimately want. And at this stage of the season, you ultimately want the Broncos to keep winning. You want them to get home field advantage. You may want to see more of what you saw from Bo Nix in the third quarter, but not at the expense of the other thing. Not at the expense of winning the game. And you saw that interception just like I did, just like Sean Payton did, and went, oh, that was awful. And part of you went, okay, time to rein it in. That's what Sean Payton is doing with this Broncos team. Once in a while, he'll let Bo Nix kind of do his thing, and it's fun and it's exciting and you enjoy it, but ultimately it's got to get back to what's the most important thing, and that's winning football games. Sean Payton, just like your favorite social media algorithm, has it down to a science. They know what you want more than anything. He knows what the Broncos need to do in order to win football games. I mean, if there's going to be a documentary about this team, it's going to be called They Should Have Lost But Didn't. Or They Could Have Lost But Didn't. The 2025 Denver Broncos. Almost every one of these games, there's a point where you go, they could lose this game. Regardless of opponent. Good opponent, bad opponent. But Sean Payton has developed this algorithm over the last couple of years. He's developed it by observing the people in his locker room and knowing their tendencies and knowing that once Bo Nix makes one really egregious decision, another is soon to follow. So let's not do that. Let's get back to doing what the Broncos do best and what has gotten us to the number one seed in the AFC. You know, Sean Payton said it after the game. Talked about how proud he was of Bo Nix and how terrific he was on the final drive. The biggest play of that game reminded me of the throw from Tebow to Demaryius Thomas in the Steelers game. Bo Nix threw it 5 yards and Evan Ingram took it 40. That's the play that Sean Payton is effusive with his praise on? Or how about a couple of plays before when he dumped it off to RJ Harvey for a first down? Those are play. He was more effusive with his praise on that than he was the throw where he's almost horizontal and throws a touchdown. Why? Because those throws that he made in overtime are the safe throws that rely on Sean Payton's play design. And at this point, who's to argue with Sean Payton on what works and what doesn't work with this Broncos team? Bo Nix was a supporting character in the overtime. It was the defense. It was Evan Ingram. It was RJ Harvey. But that's what Sean Payton loves the most about Bo Nix. Is that if he puts him in a box, he's going to stay in there and he's going to do what he's supposed to do. And by doing that, the Broncos are going to win a game. Another one. Now, you know that unless you break out of your social media algorithm, you won't broaden your horizons. Right? You're not going to get cultured by watching the same clip of the guy choking on the hot dog at lunch at work. And I hope you've seen I Think You Should Leave, or a lot of what I have just said is not registering with you. You know that in order to be a more well-rounded human being, you're going to have to find a way to break out of that algorithm, seek out things that social media isn't constantly serving you up. I think you know as well as I do that forget how far the Denver Broncos go. If they want to win a Super Bowl, they need third quarter Bo Nix. They need what Bo Nix was in the third quarter. You know it, I know it, and I think Sean Payton knows it. That's the only way. A lot of people comparing this year's Broncos team to last year's Chiefs team. You know how that story ended. You know how the 2024 Chiefs season ended. I can foresee a similar fate to the Denver Broncos. First round, AFC Championship, Super Bowl. I'm not entirely sure yet. Got to see how the bracket lines up. But at some point, playing this way and following this recipe is going to get the Broncos blown out in a playoff game. Because the later the season goes, when it gets into the postseason, especially when it gets late, we have lived in a league that has been dominated by two of the greatest quarterbacks to ever walk planet Earth in Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. And even the quarterbacks who have broken up their run of successes, the Peyton Mannings of the world when he was with the Colts, or Drew Brees, or Matthew Stafford. What the Broncos are trying to do is really thread a needle, and it's very difficult to do. Look at what the Buffalo Bills did yesterday. Yeah, they have some low lows. But man, their ceiling's higher than this Denver Broncos team. Unless we can get more of third quarter Bo Nix for the entirety of the game. So the Broncos may get all the way to the Super Bowl playing this way. They're not going to win a Super Bowl this way. You have to get more. You have to have another gear. And we don't know. In fairness to the Broncos, we don't know what their next gear is. They played all of one playoff game. But it's got to be more than this. What has gotten them to the number one seed, that's great. And Sean Payton is right in this, right? Why would you go away from it? The goal is to get the number one seed. The goal is to win the division. They're doing that this way. Why change it up just to make the game more aesthetically pleasing? But I think Sean Payton has to know that Bo Nix that made that throw horizontally at the end of the second quarter and the guy that was going all around the field in the third quarter, he's going to need that guy. You don't want to let him out too much because there is a downside, but when you're in a one-off situation where it's win or go home, you got to let him try it. That Bo Nix could lose you the game. But I think it has to be worth the risk. It's a risk that has to be taken by the Denver Broncos. But for right now, to win the division, to get home field advantage, the way they're winning games, the fact that they look all so similar, it works. And there's no reason to change it at this point. When they accomplish those first couple of goals on the checklist, then we can have a different conversation. But there are goals in front of them that they need to achieve, and they found a formula to achieve them. They're going to keep going this way. Take your thoughts on last night's Broncos win, 719-24-7, 13-13. Coming up next, Corey Roldan of KKTV with his thoughts on last night. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Broncos get it done again with a win, maybe closer than some people would have thought or liked, but such is life with the Denver Broncos. Joining me now to discuss is Corey Roldan of KKTV 11 Sports. Corey, pleasure to have you, bud.
It's great to be back on. And are we going to do this every week with the Broncos just winning these crazy games?
Yes.
Like, did they steal the Chiefs' magic from last year when winning games that they shouldn't?
Yes. I mean, in many ways, they're taking their division title, so why not also do it by taking their magic? But look, I will because the Chiefs, I think, are done. I will get one last line of praise in for this team. Do you think Sean Payton watched the Kansas City Chiefs and went, maybe I can do some of that? Not the Kelsey Mahomes, but like,
so Andy Reid's a good game manager. Sean Payton's a good game manager. Bill Belichick's a good game manager. You read the game and you pick how you want to kind of game plan. I agree to your point from your last block that the Broncos need to kick it up a notch if they want to win a Super Bowl. But in terms of being the 1 seed and winning the division, Sean Payton plays this game by game, drive by drive. He fills it out. I think he miscalculated a little bit last night until I thought the Commanders had a really good drive. I mean, really good game plan. Marcus Mariota was getting the ball out quick. They were running the football. He was using his feet as well to keep the Broncos defense off balance. So I think the Broncos needed to get more points after that third quarter, and I wish they were a little bit more aggressive, although Bo had the silly interception. Not sure what he was looking at. But I think to your point, Peyton's been a good game manager.
The throw that Bo Nix made at the end of the first half, best play he's made in a Broncos uniform?
Correct. 100%. It's everything. Like, Bo leads the NFL in percentages of throwing outside the pocket. We know he loves throwing on a run. That was, I'm going to make a play, and he looked special on that play. Bo, for the first 3 quarters, gave me everything I've been wanting to see from him, stepping up in the pocket, not getting antsy in a clean pocket. That third and long throw in the third quarter to Cortland Sutton was impressive. Him running when lanes were there was impressive as well. Until that interception, I thought Bo played really, really well.
Corey Roldan of KKTV, my guest. But here's where I don't know if it's devil's advocate or just being a wet blanket, but it was Washington, right?
It is, but this was the team that made the playoffs last year and went to the championship. They get Scary Terry back. They do have Deebo Samuel. They had some weapons offensively. Do they have Jaden Daniels? No. But Marcus Mariota played good, and this is the NFL.
Yeah, and look, there's something, and you and I were talking about this earlier. I mean, there is something to be said for the fact that Washington looked like they pulled out all the stops through everything they could at the Denver Broncos, and yet the Broncos just stood firm, followed the algorithm, the formula, the recipe, whatever you want to call it, and got another win. What was your assessment of RJ Harvey? Because you and I have both agreed over the last couple of weeks that one of the biggest things that the Broncos need to get out of the back part of this season is a trustworthy, productive RJ Harvey.
Inconsistent. There's plays that, like the first play of the game, I was like, ooh, that looks good, because he found the hole, he was patient, and he had a burst. There's a couple other times where he tried to bounce it outside and the hole was inside. But yet again, he was good in the red zone. He's a big physical back. He caught the ball. He was a good pass blocker too, which is huge for a rookie. I just think as he gets more carries, the better player he's going to be. So I'm going to say inconsistent.
Was it just me, or did like Sean Payne just decide to go like Jaleel McLaughlin for like 10 minutes?
He did, and
Last,
I didn't like that. I, Jalil's a fine player, and he every 2 or 3 drives put him in a couple times to give Harvey a break. But I think Harvey's just a way better player.
I agree with that. I found that a little bit odd. Like, I don't know. Sometimes coaches overthink things to the nth degree. It's like, could there be like, if we have, RJ Harvey out there, then maybe they're going to key on the run. I don't know, but it was weird, and I could have used more RJ Harvey carries at that time. But once again, we're sitting here talking about a Broncos victory. Is there a team, we both talk about, needing what we saw from Bo Nix for parts of that game in order to win. Let me just take your temperature on the rest of the AFC. Who's that team that you're putting stock in, that maybe even if the game was in Denver tomorrow, that you would probably take over the Broncos, or at least be quite conflicted about the whole thing?
Well, there's now 2 teams, and it's 2 teams that have played a lot of playoff games. It's definitely the Buffalo Bills. I do not like being the 2 seed and the Bills being the 7 seed. I'll tell you that. With Josh Allen and James Cook, it's definitely the Buffalo Bills, but it's also the Baltimore Ravens.
Interesting.
It's 2 quarterbacks that have been there, done that, won MVPs, and can beat you on their own, right? That can escape the pocket. Yeah, the Broncos are really good with running quarterbacks until Sunday. That's element kind of showed itself a little bit last night with Marcus Mariota. So I would say the Bills, the Ravens. I know they haven't fared well against the Chargers, but I still think that matchup is winnable, especially in Denver. Same with the Colts. You look at the Jags, not worried about the Jags. Maybe the Patriots a little bit with Drake May, but they're just young. You just don't know how they're going to react in the postseason. It's definitely the Bills and the Ravens.
Is there a team, because we're in this territory now, we're probably long overdue, given how many games in a row the Broncos have won. Do they lose again during the regular season?
Yes.
Do you got a game circled, or?
I think that they lose. I actually have 2 more losses. I have a loss to the Packers at home, so that home streak ends, and also a loss to the Chiefs on Christmas.
Okay.
But dude, you're 14-3.
Yeah, that should be good. I know the Patriots just keep winning too, and we'll see.
The Patriots also have 2 more losses on their resume.
Right.
So they're losing to the Bills and the Ravens.
And I don't know. I've been talking to some people today. People got a weird feeling about tonight that maybe the Patriots, I don't know that I necessarily buy into it, but who knows? I feel like I know what it is, because I kind of felt this way about the Broncos going into the bye week, where this thing's going to not end. I'm not talking about the season ending, but the streak is going to end in a game that you're like, really? That's the game? And I think there's that feeling around New England as well, where both of these teams are so incredibly hot right now overall that it almost feels like you and I have watched enough sports that there's going to be one where you're like, I don't think it's this week against the Raiders, but it's just, there's going to be a game where they're going to lose in a weird way, or it's going to be one of the games that no one's talking about that they're going to lose. It's not going to hurt them for the division, but that's kind of how I see it ending.
Instead of the Packers, it might be the Jags and the Chiefs, and you lose back to back.
Right.
I can see that. And then you finally beat the Chargers to end the regular season. Yeah, I could totally see that. I'm a little interested to see how Justin Herbert looks for the Chargers as well. That's a big – because he's getting surgery, correct?
I did not see whether
he's
supposed
to play next week, but you're still getting hand surgery. How does that look? I believe it's on his non-throwing hand, of course, but still.
Yeah. It's it'll be interesting to see down the stretch. While I have you, Corey Roldan of KKTV, with your intimate knowledge of the college football scene down in the great state of Louisiana. I'll ask you an open-ended question. Lane Kiffin to LSU, your thoughts?
Mixed. I'm not like the rest of Tiger LSU fans in the boot. I feel like this can go two ways, Ryan. It's LSU's a dynasty, and today he basically just said right now, Nick Saban's the reason why he just took that job. Nick Saban said it was the best job in the country over Alabama. Nick Saban's always said you could shake trees in Louisiana and get 5-star receivers and 5-star cornerbacks. The area I'm from, when I played when I played high school football, we had Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. All right. And then you get Malik Neighbors a couple of years later, CeeDee Lamb and Brian Thomas. Last year, that's 5 of the top 6 leading receivers, all in a 50-mile radius.
Lane Kiffin, well, the question is, how did LSU let CeeDee out of the state then? Because all those other guys stayed.
They had Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So you can't have all 3. But with Lane, we've seen this so much times, man. He goes fired on the tarmac at USC. Al Davis had a projector firing him from the Raiders. Nick Saban fired him because he was distracted after taking the FAU job. He leaves Tennessee. He is the pettiest coach ever. His Twitter is crazy, but he wins. Ole Miss was not a good job before he got there. Mm-hmm. Ole Miss didn't sniff 11 wins, and he's done it, twice? He's won 10 games 4 times at Ole Miss in 6 years. It's the pettiest job with the pettiest fan base. LSU loves trash talking. You know, if you don't know LSU, and kids don't do this, look up what they sing every single game, okay? I cannot say it on your place, but look up what they sing every single game. So it's either a dynasty or it ends horribly. It's no in between.
Now to another school in the SEC that poached somebody recently at Tulane, John Summerall. How do you think? I mean, Florida's been, I know Brian Kelly didn't go well at LSU, but they had some good times before that. Florida's been down for a while. Have they found their guy?
I love John Summerall. So to Florida fans, stop hating on this hire. John Summerall is not Billy Napier. John Summerall is a master motivator. I watch Tulane as much as I watch LSU. Really 40-year-old, energetic guy. He's going to bring life into that program. They're going to be tough football team. And I think it's a really good hire by the Florida Gators. I don't think it's Lane Kiffin good, but I think Florida will be back in the conversation, kind of like how Tennessee was the last couple of years of the college football playoffs with John Summerall. By the way, I'm happy he's coaching, and I get why Lane Kiffin's not coaching Ole Miss.
Yeah, that whole thing.
I'm happy Summerall.
I mean, talk about and talk about with Lane Kiffin, his past behavior. Like, do I feel like Lane Kiffin's doing it for the kids? No. He's coaching come on now. Like, he wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to make LSU look like the bad guy, or Ole Miss look like the bad guy. And it's just not going to work.
You really realize how much Ole Miss hates LSU to begin with. Ole Miss can't stand LSU. Ole Miss fans look at LSU like, man, I'm trying to think. Like, I don't want to say Broncos look at the Chiefs because it's a little bit more of a deeper hate. It's just kind of like a little brother deep hate to LSU. And in their best season of all time, heading to the college football playoffs, LSU took their greatest coach. So at the tarmac, I was showing you videos of this. They were saying some things you can't say on here. Go look at those videos. They're pretty funny. And it's just interesting. And Kiffin, he left so messy too. He was like, If you don't let me coach, I'm taking all the coaches, the players. I mean, it's just
he's been the same guy this whole time.
and ESPN just did a documentary about how he's changed, right? He's not changed.
No, not at all. But hey, if he wins football games, the people at LSU will not care one bit.
They don't care. If he wins 2 national titles and goes to the NFL in 4 years, they will not care.
And by the way, we won't either. This stuff won't matter nearly as much if Lane Kiffin goes to LSU and it works. We said the same thing with Brian Kelly. A lot of people don't like Brian Kelly, and they never won anything at LSU, but the sentiment was the same. If Brian Kelly were to win, then the family thing and all of that stuff from Notre Dame too, it would have been fine. It would have been fine, but he didn't
fit LSU. I will say
he didn't.
Kiffin fits LSU in terms of his pettiness and his desire to winning, and he fits LSU in that way. Like, people don't realize LSU, what Miami was in the 80s, LSU from 2003 to maybe 2019 was that. It was the Tyrann Mathieu, the Justin Jefferson, the Devin White, the Leonard Fournette, Patrick Peterson, trash talking. We beat you by 40, and 100,000 people are letting you know about it.
Mm.
And
but like not in a Jawan Jennings way though, like in a more stand up, bold way, not hiding behind anything like Jawan Jennings. I just wanted to find some place to insert Jawan Jennings into the conversation today because that was funny.
Good old Jawan Jennings, dude. That locker room interview was pretty
with
good.
Shelby.
Yes,
with our old buddy Shelby Harris. That was good. It was good stuff. Not nice things to say, but apparently Jennings didn't have nice things to say to the Cleveland Browns. Corey, I'll let you go. You got Sportscast coming up at 5:30 and 10. We'll be watching, bud. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you as always. Real quick,
yes.
Broncos are getting a visit from Elijah Moore, receiver.
Oh, interesting. All right. Some reporting on the way out from the intrepid reporter that is Corey Roldan of KKTV. Maybe we may get into that a little bit later, but much to do in the meantime. We'll kind of transition Corey, his expertise when it comes to the hirings made by Florida and LSU, transition perfectly into the big news over the Thanksgiving holiday for one of the schools in this state. And I think they got it absolutely right. Couple of your texts here on this Monday, 719-24-7. 1313. This coming in from the 719. Even at LSU, Kiffin proves that a tiger doesn't change its stripes. Great coach, but poor human, in my opinion. He has been the same guy this whole time. He just has been. And when, Ole Miss isn't harming anybody, right? If he was or if he's just at a power program like LSU or Alabama, people would dislike. The reason why Lane Kiffin was endearing in a way to people is because he was largely harmless. Right? He was staying at Ole Miss. It kind of looked like he had learned his lesson from his previous stops. He was building something, but Ole Miss wasn't really a power, so they were kind of this fun story. And then he has a chance to go to a team because I think what's behind a lot of this, the vitriol towards Lane Kiffin, is like real fear that he's going to get it right at LSU. Like all this talk about, money and all that kind of stuff, it's not about that. And I think people understand that at LSU, he has a better chance to restore them to a college football powerhouse than he was ever going to get Ole Miss. Now, is it worth trying? Like in a perfect world, yeah, it would be stick it through with Ole Miss and see. But I think that's what's behind it here is that the very real possibility that Lane Kiffin gets this right. And LSU's back atop the college football world. But to the texter's point, that doesn't make him more likable. Doesn't mean that he's a good guy. I mean, threatening to using the student athletes as like a human shield, like, oh, I want to coach and it's for the kids. It's not. It's for your own glory. To do that and then to turn around and say, if you don't let me, I'm going to take every single one of them from you. Paraphrasing. But you heard Corey Roldan talk about it, and the vibe I got from Corey was LSU and Lane Kiffin, they're a match. They might deserve each other. But that connection could put LSU back atop college football. We'll see. I mean, no one's rooting for that. Albert texts in and it says, I've heard that Jim Mora Jr. is the spitting image of his dad. But seriously, he's a great choice for the Farmers. That, if you're not following along, because I understand unless you are deeply committed to one of the three major college football programs in this state, you've probably lost a little bit of touch with what's going on. Let's just say the hiring of Jim Mora Jr. is picking up CSU from about rock bottom because they had a player spitting on another player, which is the lowest thing you can do. Most pathetic thing you can do is spit on another human being. At least I think that's what Albert was referencing. And look, Jay Norvell should have worked in Fort Collins. He should have worked. Right? What he built Nevada into. You could project that at a school like CSU, that he could take the success that he had at Nevada and have more success, or at least, gosh, the same amount, it got worse for Jay Norvell in Fort Collins. Which maybe that, I think some people might hope that happens with Lane Kiffin. We all see how LSU can become a national power again with him at the helm, but maybe it won't, and the lesson will be the grass isn't always greener. But I am not going to sit here and play revisionist history and say that Jay Norvell was a bad hire at the time. It absolutely was not a bad hire. It made all the sense in the world. Heck, Mike Bobo made sense, right? But there was some risk, right? There was some downside, some potential that it would not work, right? And in Bobo's case, it was, you're one of those guys that's a pretty sharp play caller, pretty good coordinator. You really can't oversee an entire program. And then they moved, a little bit more in I don't want to say safer, but I'll use that, a little bit of a safer direction, right? Okay, so we tried the hot coordinator route. That didn't work. So now let's poach a guy that's successful at the same level of college football that we play at, and see if with our resources and all that kind of stuff, if it can't work. So Mike Bobo made some sense. Jay Norvell made more sense. But now with Jim Mora Jr., not only do you have what he did at UConn, which was take over a program that I don't know if you could tell the difference really between UConn football right before Jim Mora Jr. took over that program and CSU football now. I mean, they were at the lowest of low points. CSU is at the lowest of low points right now. And in a couple years, he's starting a streak of 3 straight 9-win seasons. So it's what he did at UConn, yeah, but what he did at UConn is not totally dissimilar from what Jay Norvell did at Nevada. Right? If you just took what Jim Mora Jr. did at UConn. So there's still some downside risk here. Can't work here. Well, now let's go back. Let's go back to what Jim Mora Jr. did at UCLA in the old Pac-12. He was successful in the old Pac-12, which the old Pac-12 is way better than what the new Pac-12 is going to be, with all due respect. That old Pac-12, and not coming back. That's not what this is going to be. So it's almost like CSU has some building blocks, and I very much understand that there is a hire in Fort Collins that I'm missing, but that is intentional because that was not a good decision, and everybody could see that. But Jay Norvell should have worked. Jim Mora Jr. is going to work. Now, what is CSU in it for? Are they in to win the Pac-12? Again, this is a lesser version of that conference than what used to be. So, yeah, maybe he could do that. I mean, we're still not talking about national championships in Fort Collins. We're not talking about national championships for anybody in the new Pac-12. Like, let's be real about this. So as long as people aren't getting too carried away with what the CSU program in the new Pac-12 is capable of, Jim Mora Jr. is going to work because it's worked pretty much everywhere he's gone. And has worked in multiple places that are at a much higher level than CSU is. This is a huge get in Fort Collins. It's a huge get. And it's not foolproof. But man, I have a hard time looking at this hire and seeing how this doesn't work. He's been successful at on bigger stages than CSU will ever play on. He knows the lay of the land, both recruiting wise in this part of the country, but also with this new iteration of the Pac-12, recruiting against schools that can say, hey, we're on the beach in California and all this kind of stuff. I don't, it's not 100%. I don't know what the percentage is, but somebody's got to explain to me why this won't work. Understanding what is actually feasible at Colorado State. A great get. I was shocked. I was sitting in the airport. I didn't get it as it was breaking. I'm sitting and waiting for my plane, and I'm scrolling through social media. I'm like, what? Good on the folks at CSU. They made the right decision. And that's all you can do. They are a little snake bit with these decisions. They've made other decisions that have on paper made all the sense in the world. This one has a higher probability of hitting than any of those previous ones. So good for the folks at Fort Collins. And after this season, man, that's a group of fans who could have used that pick-me-up. Jim Moore Jr., now the head coach at Colorado State University, which is now heading for the Pac-12. One thing that Jim Moore Jr. will not do? Win the Ram Falcon Trophy. Boom. 719-24-7, 13-13. Back to the Broncos after this. Welcome in hour 2 on this Monday. Appreciate you watching the show on our social media platforms, most notably YouTube, but also on Facebook, Instagram, and X. The handle is the same in all of those places. If you'd like to watch the show, at XTRA Sports 1300. While you're there, like, subscribe, follow, drop a comment. We thrive on word of mouth advertising in this business. There is a more traditional way of reaching out to the show and giving your thoughts. 719-247-1313. That is the text line and the phone line. We will get back to the text line here because we got more reaction to the notable hirings in the world of college football. Lane Kiffin to LSU and locally Jim Mora Jr. to CSU. Get to those thoughts as we move you through the hour up to our coverage of Monday Night Football. And if you're a Broncos fan, tonight's game holds some relevance for you, given that it's the New England Patriots who seem like at this point their biggest threat to wrestle away home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs from the Denver Broncos. But the Broncos do it again. Went into overtime, but ultimately the Denver Broncos win another one of these incredibly close football games. What is it, 4 straight now being decided by less than 3 points? And there was a stat that I want to pull up. This was from Opta Stats, just to kind of, here it is, just to tell you how remarkable it is what the Denver Broncos are doing right now. There have been 202 instances in NFL history of a team trailing in each of its first 12 games of a season. The Broncos of this year are the only ones to win 10 of those games. Only one other team even had 8 wins at that point, and that was our favorite, the 1978 Oilers, who were 8-4. So maybe the comparison shouldn't be to last year's Chiefs team in some ways. I mean, you can compare them, but let's give the Broncos their due. What they're doing is largely unprecedented. No one has done it like this to this degree of success. Now, the idea of them trailing, it's like Bo Nix's comeback wins. If you're down by a score, I'm not really calling that a comeback. But, I mean, the Broncos just keep doing this. Here's Sean Payton as to why they just keep doing this.
I say it all the time, you have to, it has to come from doing it. And I think, you go back to the Philly game, that was, there's always these marks in the season. So you can look at a few.
But that was the game. And I think back to what I said after the Broncos beat the Eagles. In at the time, a very Eagles way. Right? At the time, it kind of looked like, maybe to a casual observer, that the Broncos were beating the Eagles the way that the Eagles beat teams. Right? Gave them a taste of their own medicine. And we have certainly long come to understand that, no, that's the Broncos' way of trying to win football games. And what's remarkable about that stat I just read off, yeah, the games they lost, they were in a similar situation. They were following a similar blueprint. But what I said after the Eagles game was, if they can do that to that team, who can't they do this to? And I reiterated it against Kansas City last week. And that's exactly what Sean Payton is saying there. Philadelphia is the impetus, if you will, of all of this. That's where it started. That's where Sean Payton's algorithm, his recipe, his blueprint finally sunk in with the Denver Broncos. Like, oh, we can do this all the time and win far more than we're going to lose. That's when I think the team truly believed in what Sean Payton was preaching. They respected what Sean Payton was saying. They were following it. They had belief, or they had faith. But they got the proof of concept against Philadelphia. And they have just taken it to every single week. And they just, it's the same thing. You may have loved Bo Nix in that third quarter, but the guy Sean Payton really wants is the guy that existed in the fourth quarter and overtime. Dump the pass here, dump it there. Let the receivers do the rest. And it works, and rely on your defense. And I know it got nervy there at the end. Washington drove down the field and scored. And let's also, too, frame up their opponent in the correct way here. Like, from a talent perspective, I get it. And I brought it up with Corey. And that's my question about what we saw from Bo Nix that was really good. Okay? When we see the best of Bo Nix, and when we really see him cooking, look at who he's doing it against. I understand if you're a bit skeptical that Bo Nix can do what he did last night against the Buffalo Bills. Or the New England Patriots, or in a Super Bowl against the Rams, or throw out a team that you still believe in, because every team in the NFL has given you every reason to jump off the bandwagon this year. Except really the Denver Broncos, because they just keep winning. They are not, susceptible to the, just look at yesterday. LA loses to Carolina. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The Rams, who I just said a week ago are the one team that you can say is like truly elite, that has no visible warts whatsoever, and they turn around and lose to the Carolina Panthers? But in a league where this is happening, and every week a team that we're ready to crown ultimately falls immediately after us placing that crown atop their head, the Denver Broncos just keep winning. But I understand if you look at what Bo Nix did against the Washington Commanders and go, okay, but it's the Commanders. I get that. Because we haven't seen that Bo Nix a lot, or we've just seen it in the fourth quarter. And most of the times where we're talking about seeing the Bo Nix that you hope and dreamed he would be, you look at the opponent and go, okay. I understand that. But you have to acknowledge that they're the one team that keeps chugging along while all of these other teams that we are so sure are better than the Denver Broncos, they fall by the wayside. And they drop a game here and there. So I understand that if you want to look at that game last night and say, to some extent, it was the Washington Commanders. And you want to go back to the Raider game. I think that the Broncos are like a liquid that take the form of whatever the container they're put in. Maybe they play down to their competition. They play up to their competition. I think there's some truth to that. But what also has to be said about last night's game is that in many ways, that was Washington's Super Bowl. They have had a disaster of a season. Jaden Daniels has been hurt, and then he was back, and now he's hurt again. And you appreciate, I think, what Jaden Daniels was able to do last year because the team's not that different, and look at what they're doing without him. And even the team is 2-4 when he's on the field. But Washington, there are going to be a lot of teams down the stretch that it's kind of going to be this way. You have to acknowledge that Washington, also coming off of a bye week, looked at this like this could be, and maybe not our Super Bowl, but this could be our crowning achievement of the year. What else does Washington have but to be one of those teams that knock off a team that's destined to be in the playoffs? So the motivation level from Washington was extremely high. The Broncos are no longer the hunter. Down the stretch, they're going to be the hunted. And you're going to get the other team's best. And I thought Marcus Mariota made some boneheaded decisions in that game, but overall, he was very good. And I thought a lot of players on Washington played at their absolute best trying to beat the Denver Broncos. And yet it was not enough. So I understand from a talent perspective, if you don't, aren't, freaking out about the quality of win, but also understand that that game meant a lot to Washington. And they threw everything they had at the Denver Broncos. They tried all sorts of fun stuff. And when it mattered the most, the Broncos just stayed the course. Bo Nix, don't try to do too much. We'll run the football. We'll rely on our defense. And they ended up winning the football game. Now, that being said, how about that second quarter throw from Bo Nix? The highs of Bo Nix in that game last night were as high as we've seen from Bo Nix. And that throw, that was the best play he's made in a Broncos uniform. Here's Sean Payton on that Nix throw.
Look, end of half, end of game, those critical moments. That was an amazing throw. We were worried his knee was down, but he had good poise, good command, was smart.
And then he immediately goes back. Like, that's the play that everyone wants to fawn over and have daydreams about Bo Nix doing that on a regular basis. Because the Broncos have lived in a division for years with a guy that can make some of those kind of plays. And to be able to have somebody that can do some of that, that's a dream come true. But what does Sean Payne immediately want to go back to when asked for comment about the crazy throw that Bo Nix made? The game manager stuff. So Sean Payne's being a little bit of a stick in the mud when it comes to that, if I'm being honest. Like, it's okay to marvel at it, but I feel like some part of Sean Payne's brain was like, I don't want to give him too much praise because then he thinks he could do this all the time, and I don't want him to do this all the time. but it was a great throw. And I remember talking about this during the offseason. You know, all of these elite quarterbacks in the NFL have a superpower, let's call it. Right? They have something that you watch and you're just like, not everybody has that. And I'm sorry, it's not the ability to not take sacks. That's not the superpower. As much as Sean Payton wants it to be, it's not. You know, it's Lamar Jackson's athleticism. It's Josh Allen's ability to run over people. It's Mahomes' improvisational skills. It's Joe Burrow, that Joe Cool moniker that's kind of been passed down from Joe Montana to him. The elite quarterbacks in this league have something that you look at that is uncommon amongst their peers, and it wins their team football games. We haven't seen Bo Nix's superpower because right now it's about this formula, this algorithm, this recipe for success that Sean Payton wants to keep employing, and it's been successful. But that kind of stuff that you saw at the end of that second quarter and for most of the third quarter, that's Bo Nix's superpower. If he has one, it's that. And if he's going to become an elite quarterback in this league, that kind of stuff has to happen more. We have an insane, you understand how insanely high our standard is for quarterbacks? And I'll admit it, right? I'm guilty of this too. At least half of my life, I have seen Elway, Marino, Brady, Manning, Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen. Like, these guys are all freaks. So when somebody doesn't look like that, then yeah, it's natural for us to kind of not insult them, but like not be impressed by them. Right? We do have an insanely high standard when it comes to quarterbacks in the NFL, but the standard is the standard. And for Bo Nix to reach that, he has to show something that is uncommon, and it's not taking sacks. It's not, or not avoiding sacks. It's not dumping the ball off to Evan Ingram and letting him run it 40 yards. It's that scrambling ability. It's the ability to make off-platform throws that when you see it, it leaves you wanting more because Sean Payton will immediately put that back in the box, as he did last night. Once Bo Nix threw that interception, it was like, all right, we're done here with the Bo Nix show. But that kind of stuff, I think it's a bigger picture. It's a future thing as far as Bo Nix. We're not talking about Bo Nix being one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the league right this second, nor should we be. If he's ever going to get to that level next year, the year after that, and beyond, that's his ticket there. And I do think that that's also the Broncos' ticket to winning a Super Bowl. I think more is going to be required of Bo Nix than to just be smart and take care of the football. I think it will require more than that. There are only one every so often in the NFL where we look at a team and say they played it safe. It was defense. It was running the ball. It was, taking care of it. Most of the time we get superb quarterback performances in the playoffs. Jaw-dropping stuff. So that's still where I am, is that the Broncos are going to need that. Is it going to be their first playoff game, their second playoff game? Is it not going to be to the Super Bowl? I don't know yet. But at some point, the Bo Nix that we saw, especially at the end of the second quarter and into that third quarter prior to the interception, that's the Bo Nix they need to win a Super Bowl. I don't think as much as it was enough for the Broncos to win last night, the Bo Nix you saw in the fourth quarter and overtime is not enough. I don't believe it is. Not when you get to that stage. But that throw was something else. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, it only took, what week are we in? 13, 14, but we finally got an Evan Ingram game. A reminder of what role Evan Ingram actually has in this Broncos offense. Broncos beat the Commanders, and you can certainly say one of the standout performers from last night was Evan Ingram, and he made the biggest play of the game, you could say, perhaps on at least on the offensive side. We can go back and forth on, that versus Nick Benito's batting down of Marcus Mariota's pass, which would have been, as Chris Collinsworth pointed out on the broadcast, a surefire conversion to win the game. But Evan Ingram had the biggest play of the game, and it certainly seemed like the Broncos were making a concerted effort to involve Evan Ingram. But I want to remind people, because I knew this was going to happen. I talked about this at the beginning of the season, but now is a good time to bring it back up. That role of the Joker, I think you can use real life jokers, or maybe not real life jokers, but other jokers to illustrate what Evan Ingram's role is. Take Heath Ledger's Joker and take the Nuggets Joker. Both are not really in it for their own selfish gains. Right? That's not what they're in it for. Nikola Jokic would much rather see Jamal Murray go off, or Aaron Gordon, or Christian Brown. But when it's necessary, he's like, all right, I got to be the guy who scores the basketball here. But the way that Nikola Jokic wants to play. It is unselfish, and he would just be fine dishing out a bunch of assists and the Denver Nuggets win the game. He's not in it for his own gain. Heath Ledger's Joker also not in it for his own gain. Right? He just burned that mountain of money. He wasn't looking to profit off of this. He just wanted to see the world in chaos. Evan Ingram's role is an unselfish one. Evan Ingram's role is to get the attention of one of the better coverage players on the opposing defense so that Sean Payton can exploit a mismatch somewhere else. Evan Ingram exists to run routes so others can catch passes. That's what the Joker role is. The Joker role is not designed for Evan Ingram to be the primary target of the Denver Broncos. Now, last night, Evan Ingram got open a lot. That was part of it. But also, Sean Payton perhaps saw, all right, well, now Evan Ingram is the matchup that Evan Ingram is setting up for us. And I love Bobby Wagner, but he's not what he used to be. And the Broncos exploited that matchup. But in most of these games, Evan Ingram's existence is to benefit others, not himself. So I understand when he is billed as the most important acquisition, which he is. That doesn't change. But I think a lot of people look at it through the lens of, if he is the most important acquisition, then it's, he's going to be the guy to put up the numbers. No. He gets the attention of an opposing defensive coordinator who then puts his best coverage guy on Evan Ingram. And in that way, there is a lesser cover player on Cortland Sutton or on Troy Franklin or on Pat Bryant. And that's what Sean Payton will draw up a play for, that matchup. So maybe from a receiving point of view, Evan Ingram hasn't had even the season that maybe even I thought he would, but we can't forget what his purpose is. It's a very unselfish position. And we have seen this throughout Sean Payton's career. Yeah, when he had Jimmy Graham, who is, from a talent perspective, as good as any tight end we have ever had in the NFL. Sure, that guy got fed the ball quite a bit. But Reggie Bush was never a high-volume pass catcher. Jeremy Shockey, I think, was more productive with the Giants than he was with the Saints. Evan Ingram exists to set up Sean Payton to exploit other matchups. And I would expect that to be the case moving forward. I don't know that we're going to get another game from Evan Ingram as good as that one or as productive as that one, because I don't want to say that that's his best game, because that would be beholden to numbers. His value goes beyond that. But in terms of his production, yeah, that might be the best. That might be the best by far from Evan Ingram. And good for the Broncos because they needed it. But that Joker role, and it got misconstrued and twisted around. It's not a high volume, big production role. It's a big play role every now and again, as last night showed. But it's about getting favorable matchups elsewhere on the field. 719-247-1313. I'll spend the final segment of today's show getting to your thoughts on all the day's topics here on Extra Sports 1300. If you're listening on radio, this bumper is a little fitting considering the first text that I will get to here from the 719. Nix is at his ceiling. Is there gold on that ceiling? I don't think so. But I think I think it's the frustrating thing for fans and critics alike is that you're not going to see it. You're just not going to see it. As long as the Broncos keep putting up these wins, Sean Payton will have very little patience for Bo Nix improvising. Just not going to see it. But I contend that they have to get that Bo Nix. In a playoff game against an elite team, they're going to need it. They're going to need it. If you want to compare this Broncos team to last year's Chiefs team, just look at the Super Bowl and how a team that people were saying, how do they keep doing this? Kept doing it and kept doing it and kept thumbing their nose at the critics. And then ultimately they got to the very last game, the very last one, and they got embarrassed. So I don't know if you want to compliment the Denver Broncos by comparing them to last year's Chiefs team, just know that, remember, that story did not end well. I'm kind of with the texter. I think that Bo Nix is pretty much what he's going to be. But the one little sliver for you, if you're a Broncos fan, I'll call it hope. For me, I don't know how I would describe it. But there's a little sliver in there where you're wondering if it wasn't Sean Payton that was his coach. Understanding that Sean Payton overall has done a very good job with Bo Nix. He's done a good job with the Broncos. This is not criticism, but are we ever going to get to see Bo Nix fully unleashed with Sean Payton as his head coach? I don't know that we will. And I don't know if we're going to see the two of them separate. So that leads to just this curiosity, this little thing that kind of sticks in the back of your head. Like, man, I think Bo Nix is capable of more than this. Not that what he's done has been awful by any stretch of the imagination, but just this idea that there's another level. There's another level that Bo Nix might be able to go. Maybe, possibly. We can't know for sure because we don't see it enough to say that can be him all the time. And part of that is absolutely Sean Payton. But at the same time, Sean Payton knows Bo Nix better than you and I do. I think there is a method to his madness. There is a method to what he is doing. And I think maybe you got to see it a little bit when Bo Nix is running around and making plays in the third quarter, and then he made an unconscionable decision with the football. Like, it's almost like, as much as Sean Payton loves Bo Nix, and he does, there's some of it where he's like that Shannon Sharp meme where Shannon Sharp's pointing and leaning back and all these histrionics. Like, I felt like Sean Payton did that in his head. He's like, see, you guys want to see this guy make all these plays, and I let him go a little bit, and then look what he does. And then it was back to, all right, I'm taking back over. Bo Nix, you play the brand of quarterback that I want you to play. and it was successful yet again. I do believe that Bo Nix is right up against his ceiling. But there's always going to be that shred of doubt, that shred of curiosity, that little piece in the back of my head that goes, if he didn't have Sean Payton, would he be? I mean, but the other side of it, of course, is that if he didn't have Sean Payton, would he be even as successful as he's been? Right? So it is an ultimate catch-22. But there's always going to be that part of me that will wonder if there's actually more to Bo Nix than I am giving him credit for. But it's also more of Bo Nix that I won't get to see because Sean Payton is his coach and has a very specific way he likes things done. This from the 719. Ryan, love the show. Appreciate that, Jason. Diehard Broncos fan, but is it just me or was that the worst officiated game that you have ever watched? I at some point could not believe what I was watching. It was an incredible, it was a poorly officiated game. We had the pile thing. Like we always have these, we used to have what is a catch, then what is interference, then what is this, what is that. Now we need to define what a pile is. By rule, if Nick Benito was pulling a Commanders player off a pile, that would be a penalty. But there was no pile. It was one guy. So it seemed like a misapplication. Now, is what Nick Benito did there necessary? No. Should he have done that? No. But if the rule is a pile and it's not a pile, then how are you penalizing him for pulling the guy off of the pile? So I thought that was one gaffe by the officials. But I thought it cut both ways. They had a really tough time last night with pass interference. They had a really tough time trying to, walk that line between, gosh, we don't want to call everyone, but at the same time, do we need to call more than this? And then the one that might have been the most egregious call of the night and could have cost the Commanders dearly. In no universe was that intentional grounding from Marcus Mariota. That was an awful call. And think about the situation it put the Commanders in. They had played this amazing game to this point to have a wrong call on intentional grounding that should not have been in overtime, and it's second and or in regulation, it's second and whatever. But that also, and I agree, and I'm not sitting here saying that the NFL is the best officiated league. And I'm not somebody that sits here and says that the officials are beyond criticism. And all my point has been over the years is how many games really and truly get decided by a blown call? Because even if the most important play of the game is a wrong call, it's still a 4-quarter game. I put the onus on the teams to overcome it. Right? And the Commanders did. They did. That terrible intentional grounding call did not cost them. It cost them in the moment, but they were able to recover. That's what you have to do. We're not going to replay review every single thing throughout the entirety of the game. We're just never going to get to that point. You have to live with human error. And there's no favorites here. Those tinfoil hat wearing people can kick rocks. Referees aren't in the bag for anybody. Anybody. Does star treatment exist? Of course. But you chalk it up to human nature. It's not nefarious. There's nothing nefarious going on here. They just mess up. And honestly, most officials mess up less than the players on the field. Take how many missed calls compared to how many drop passes, fumbles, missed tackles, penalties that were rightly called, the mess ups on the players. So this is under the heading of two things can be true. It was one of the poorer officiated games that I have watched in a while. But did it cost either team the game? No. No, it did not, and it rarely does. There's always a different situation you could go to at another point in the game and say, well, what if you did this? Then it wouldn't even come down to this. There were some bad calls there. And speaking of somebody who I think is guilty most every single time he's called for pass interference. But Riley Moss is one of the most tragic figures in Colorado sports right now. And I have been critical of him. And I think that people are making him their little, pet project and trying to protect him and leave Riley alone. Stop picking on him. I think he's deserved. The criticism is deserved. The guy pass interferes a lot. And it's part of the reason why, whatever that number is, for a guy that faces this many, targets his way, he only gives up whatever. Yeah, but you're not factoring in how many times he interferes with the receiver to prevent them from catching the football. But there's this story leading up to the game about how Riley Moss is like practicing with boxing gloves so he can't grab, right? Because he acknowledges. He's not sitting there saying, oh, the referees are picking on me. He's saying, I got to be better, and I give him credit for that. And he's practicing with boxing gloves so he can't grab onto receivers. And he plays Treylon Burks as well as you could possibly ask him to. No pass interference whatsoever. And Treylon Burks looks like Odell Beckham Jr. on that touchdown. Like, you got it. As critical as I have been for Riley Moss, I felt for him in that moment. I'm like, man, he did everything right. And that's the catch that Treylon Burks, who I thought was out of the league until last night, makes that kind of a catch. Like, man, the universe is just not in Riley Moss's favor right now. But true to form, he messed up on that coverage on Deebo Samuel. I'm not as high on Riley Moss as other people are, but I can acknowledge when the guy did everything right and still the poor guy gets mossed. Couple of texts here. If Joe Burrow is Joe Cool, Bo Nix is Bo Cool. Officials made up the poor flag for intentional grounding by allowing receiver picks on the last two plays in overtime. See, this is not, I don't like this discourse. I really don't. But Dave's right. Right? Very rarely is there a game. Take your own bias out of it. Very rarely is there a game where every single questionable call goes in favor of one team or against one team. They are equal opportunity offenders officials are. And I thought that there were plays. I thought both Washington and Denver false started on key plays that were not called. But Dave's sentiment is right. I don't want to go tit for tat here on, how many calls were against Washington, how many, but Dave makes the right point there. Officials, you want to say that they stink equally for both teams. They miss calls for both teams. And what I liked most about last night's game is that in the end, it was decided by the players. The Commanders had a great play design. They had a player that was wide open, and one of the best linebackers in the league jumped up and batted the ball down to save the game for his team. That was best on best. And the Broncos won that. And they've made a habit of that lately. And then there's this from the 709, plenty of calls went the Denver way. Yeah. They did. Washington could felt hard done by at times. The Broncos could have. That's why it's just discourse that I don't like having. Because I don't believe there's anything nefarious, and chances are if you take the game in its entirety and not get so caught up in one call because it's at a specific time, you could go back and say, you know what? They missed X number of calls and they were split about even. I got to get out. We'll get more into Jim Moore Jr. had some comments today, so we'll get more into that, hiring more into the Broncos win over Washington and where they go from here. Surely this is not the week where they finally fall, right? The Raiders. We'll talk about that. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Appreciate your patronage. Coming up next, see if the Patriots can keep pace with the Denver Broncos by beating the Giants. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300.